Hello again and welcome to American Movie Classics. I'm Bob Dorian. Today, of course, is Friday, the 29th of August, Ingrid Bergman's birthday. And to honor this gifted actress whose radiance and strength and vitality marked her every performance, we present two of her early films. First, she makes her Hollywood debut in David O. Selznick's production of Intermezzo as a young girl who becomes romantically involved with an older married man. Leslie Howard and Edna Best co-star as the once happily married couple. Then, in Notorious, Bergman is at the center of a superb spy thriller directed by the master of suspense, Alfred Hitchcock. Cary Grant and Claude Rains became smitten by her many charms as they both fall in love with her. They're both great movies, and Bergman is superb in both of them. Now, let's do the answer to yesterday's movie question. Can you name for me the outstanding English actor who became a star when he played the romantic lead in Brief Encounter? Well, this versatile actor also celebrates his birthday today, and his name is Trevor Howard. And his many varied roles have cast him as a villain as well as a hero. And as a character actor, he's played both titled gentlemen and scheming killers. I have another question for you later. Right now, let's take a look at our movie clock. We'll be right back. Kay Brown was excited because she had found something she knew her boss really wanted. Brown was David O. Selznick's representative in New York, and her job was to screen new foreign films, looking for properties Selznick could buy and remake for American audiences. What she had found was a Swedish film called Intermezzo and a 23-year-old actress by the name of Ingrid Bergman. But when Selznick met her, Ingrid Bergman, he was horrified. Bergman was 5 feet 7 inches tall in a day when most of the leading men around were under 6 feet. Bergman just did not look like a movie star. She had thick eyebrows and her teeth weren't perfectly straight, and she spoke very little English. Well, other than that, she was okay. Well, the day after a welcoming party, Selznick met with Ingrid Bergman at the studio, laying out plans to change her name and straighten her teeth out and dye her hair and pluck her eyebrows. Well, Bergman flatly refused the whole thing, saying that there would be no changes. When Selznick realized that she was really serious, he called in the publicity department and he said, listen to this for a turnaround. I've got a brilliant idea, he told them. Let's publicize Bergman as the first natural Hollywood beauty. No capped teeth, her own hair, her own name. And here she is, just the way she really was. Ingrid Bergman in Intermezzo. Before the film, we talked a lot about Ingrid Bergman, and I didn't mention her co-star, Leslie Howard. To understand Howard's role in the film, we really have to go back about a year. Selznick was casting Gone with the Wind at the time, and he wanted Leslie Howard in the role of Ashley Wilkes, but Howard didn't want to play Wilkes and flatly refused the role. He said he didn't want to play any more of those weak, ineffective men. Well, Selznick knew that money wouldn't change Howard's mind, but he knew what would. Howard, you see, wanted to make a bigger contribution to the creative side of his film, so David O. Selznick promised Howard that he could function as an associate producer on Intermezzo if he took the role of Ashley Wilkes in Gone with the Wind. Well, the actor agreed, and the rest, as they say, is film history. Now, you may have noticed his name in the credits twice, once for his acting role and once as associate producer. Tragically, this was to be his last film. Shortly after filming was complete, Leslie Howard was killed in a plane crash. We'll be right back, but first let's watch this.
In August, American Movie Classic says, Happy Birthday, Hollywood.
Oh, I'm going to have a marvelous time.
Robert Mitchum's in the spotlight on his birthday with a rough and tumble double bill.
Stick around. Music, whiskey, privacy. Stick around, looks like a party.
Also this month, a thrilling birthday salute to the master of suspense, Alfred Hitchcock. August brings you an American Movie Classics tribute to the legendary Ingrid Bergman, featuring two of her most unforgettable performances.
Thank you.
The celebration marches on with a double feature honoring one of Hollywood's most respected and talented actors, Frederick March.
Thank you.
And happy birthday, Myrna Loy.
Now, isn't that sweet?
August showcases 3 of her best-loved films. It's a fantastic month-long tribute to 5 fabulous Hollywood personalities.
Oh, I just love birthdays. I think birthdays are the best.
American Movie Classics says, Happy Birthday, Hollywood. The legendary Paul Muni, the gangster.
I made a deal. Well, how could I know that I'd meet up with a girl like you?
Claude Rains, the devil.
My children, you'd be lost without me.
Anne Baxter, the angel.
You're not only destroying yourself, you're destroying me.
In the classic tale of a man's redemption.
For the first time I can remember, I'm trying to do something for somebody else.
Angel on my shoulder.
I'm going to tell off the devil.
An American Movie Classic, Wednesday, September 3rd.
We're back, and before we continue, I would just like to tell you that next Friday's action twin bill revolves around 2 vicious killers. Our premiere, titled The Devil Takes a Ride, really tells it all. Lawrence Tierney and Ted North star in this tense story of an unsuspecting man who is duped by a master criminal. Based on the success of that film, tough guy Lawrence Tierney made the next film, too, Born to Kill, with an all-star cast. Claire Trevor is here, and Walter Slezak, and Elijah Cook Jr. They co-star in this tale of corruption that fascinated moviegoers back in 1947. So be with us next Friday for this rare double feature in which the leading character is a hardened criminal. That was pretty unusual in that time. We'll be right back. But first, here's something very interesting I think you'll find from our film archives. Let's take a look. We are back. I hope you enjoyed that selection from our film archives. Now, let's get on to our next Ingrid Bergman film. Directors in the 1940s were under some restrictions that contemporary filmmakers really don't have to deal with. A case in point is Notorious, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. In those days, censors were adamant that love scenes could not contain what they called protracted kissing, but Hitchcock, in this film, wanted a long, protracted love scene. Now, you'll see how he solves the problem, and also, by doing so, became the first Hollywood director to slip a 3-minute kissing scene past the censors. Hitchcock later said that Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman felt very uncomfortable during the scene, possibly because of the way the director shot it. Now, Hitchcock didn't want it to be a scene in which the audience merely watched 2 people falling in love. He wanted you, the audience, to really feel and experience the love that was happening between the characters. So he shot the scene as though the camera were a third actor. Cary Grant complained to Hitchcock that he was favoring Bergman too much, not only in that scene, but in all the scenes that the two appeared in. There could be some truth to this accusation, since Hitchcock's biographers seem to believe that the director was secretly in love with his leading lady. The photography and the lighting in the final bedroom scene, for example, which all but cuts out Cary Grant from the picture, seem to lend credence to that theory. Here are Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant and Notorious. When Alfred Hitchcock was working on the storyline for Notorious, he knew the plot revolved around German activity in Rio, but he and Ben Hecht couldn't really come up with the proper illegal activity that was to take place. Then Hitchcock thought of the idea that they were collecting samples of uranium-235. The story was sent around to several Hollywood producers, but they all turned it down. The idea that uranium could be used to make some kind of a bomb was too far-fetched. Finally, Hitchcock got so frustrated, he was willing to make the plot revolve around almost anything: industrial diamonds, military secrets, anything. As he explained to one producer, he was making a love story here that was also a spy story, and it didn't matter what the MacGuffin was. Incidentally, if you haven't heard the word MacGuffin, according to Hitchcock, a MacGuffin was whatever it was that spies were after in the espionage story. It's kind of the hook. In fact, in the later film, North by Northwest, Hitchcock disposes of the MacGuffin in one line. When Cary Grant asks James Mason what the enemy agents are after, James Mason merely answers, government secrets. Now, as far as government secrets were concerned, this is curious. The FBI and the CIA were watching Hitchcock very carefully for some time after this film. They wanted to know how it was he knew about uranium-235. Hitchcock says that if you read between the lines in the newspapers and the films and what was on the air at the time, it was pretty obvious. The Germans had been experimenting with heavy water, and he just put two and two together. It's funny, nobody else did, but they were watching him with a jaundiced eye for quite a while. He came out clean. We'll be right back, but first let's take a look at this.
Sell his soul to the devil, and I would for about 2 cents. My name is Scratch.
It's been called one of the best films ever made. Walter Huston is brilliant in an Academy Award-nominated performance as the devil in the timeless tale of the battle to save one man's soul.
I demand a trial for my client.
Before a jury of the damned.
The devil versus Davis Stone. I protest, Your Honor.
Edward Arnold co-stars in the award-winning fantasy
If you speak and fail to convince us, you too are doomed.
The Devil and Daniel Webster.
I'd fight 10,000 devils to save a New Hampshire man.
An American movie classic, Wednesday, September 3rd. When you're on vacation,
This is Venice we're coming into, isn't it?
anything can happen. When you're in Venice,
Wow.
love can happen. When you're in love,
Wonderful, mystical, magical.
miracles can happen.
Everything happens to him who waits.
Katharine Hepburn, nominated for an Academy Award, stars in David Lean's romantic Summertime, an American movie classic, Thursday, September 4th.
We're back, and before we continue, I would just like to tell you that next Friday's action twin bill revolves around two vicious killers. Our premiere, titled The Devil Takes a Ride, really tells it all. Lawrence Tierney and Ted North star in this tense story of an unsuspecting man who is duped by a master criminal. Based on the success of that film, tough guy Lawrence Tierney made the next film, too, Born to Kill, with an all-star cast. Claire Trevor is here, and Walter Slezak, and Elijah Cook Jr. They co-star in this tale of corruption that fascinated moviegoers back in 1947. So be with us next Friday for this rare double feature in which the leading character is a hardened criminal. That was pretty unusual in that time. We'll be right back. But first, here's something very interesting I think you'll find from our film archives. Let's take a look. American Movie Classics presents Newsreel Theater, featuring rare newsreel footage of historic people and events.
In the beginning, in the 1930s, Charles de Gaulle is an obscure French tank officer, dreaming of the power and potential of armored warfare. But France, behind the Maginot Line, has no need of young dreamers with revolutionary ideas. 500,000 men on duty day and night can hurl back any kind of conventional attack. The attack that comes is not, however, a conventional attack. It is a blitzkrieg, a lightning war. German armored legions, using many of the military techniques advocated by Charles de Gaulle, smash over, through, and around the vaunted Maginot Line. Proud, unprepared, France is driven to her knees in a month. Behind the troops, riding a special train that crosses the Rhine and rolls into France, is Adolf Hitler. The Fuhrer comes to purge and avenge the bitter memory of his country's defeat in World War I. Hitler's destination is Compiègne, where Germany surrendered to France in November 1918. Now the tables are turned. The Fuhrer is master of the European continent. For fallen France, this is her darkest hour. For Adolf Hitler, this is his moment supreme.
This is William L. Shirer speaking from the forest of Compiègne, where Adolf Hitler today is handing his armistice terms to France. It is 3:15 p.m. Adolf Hitler strides slowly toward the little clearing. I can see his face. It is grave, solemn, yet brimming with revenge. Off to one side is a large statue of Marshal Foch. Hitler does not appear to see it. Now we see the French walking down the avenue, led by General Hunsinger. Hitler and the other German leaders rise as the French enter. General Keitel reads the preamble to the German armistice terms. This whole ceremony is over in a quarter of an hour.
The last time I saw Paris, her heart was young and gay. No matter how they changed her, I'll remember her that way.
Charles de Gaulle has escaped to London. He will not surrender. France has lost a battle, he says, but France has not lost the war. My countrymen rally to me. They do. And Charles de Gaulle, man without a country, becomes the symbol, the leader of free France. Army, Navy, and Air Force units are organized in England. My crusade, says de Gaulle, is to reclaim the glory and grandeur of France. He dreams only of liberating his homeland. He sets up an underground army to harass the German occupation forces. And the Nazis never know where, when, or how the saboteurs will strike. Traveling to Moscow, the lifelong soldier becomes of necessity a statesman. De Gaulle frankly admits that he will ask for and accept aid from anyone and everyone. Meeting with other Allied leaders, Charles de Gaulle is a Frenchman first, last, and always. He thinks himself the living representative of Joan of Arc, says President Roosevelt. He is, writes Churchill, no friend of England. At Casablanca, a move is made to divide the leadership of Free French forces between de Gaulle and another resistance hero, General Henri Giraud. While seeming to accept the arrangement, de Gaulle continues on, just as before. D-Day, June 6, 1944. General Eisenhower broadcasts a fateful message.
People of Western Europe, a landing was made this morning on the coast of France by troops of the Allied Expeditionary Force. The hour of your liberation is approaching.
After 4 years in exile, Charles de Gaulle is home. Without America's help, he tells General Eisenhower, liberation would never have come. August 25th, 1944. Paris is free. But if liberation has come, danger is not past. German snipers open fire on the victory procession in an attempt to assassinate de Gaulle. The general remains unconcerned, impassive, impatient. Finally, the snipers are captured. The conquerors have become the conquered, to be jeered and cursed and spit upon by the people of Paris. Free at last. General de Gaulle thanks America.
I want to thank again the American people for the magnificent effort which, under the leadership of your two great presidents, Roosevelt and Truman, has made possible the victory. Without you, Americans, there would have been no future for Europe and for Asia, but a terrible servitude. There would have been neither justice nor freedom for the world Long live the United States of America.
When peace comes, France is paralyzed by crippling strikes and political instability. Charles de Gaulle, as provisional president, is powerless to act. And so after 14 months, he retires. One day, he says, France will have need of me again. In the decade that follows, there is an endless procession of French premiers. 25 governments are formed and fall in 12 years. No one man, no single party is strong enough to rule alone. 1958, the time has come. France again has need of Charles de Gaulle. The people rallied to him as they did in 1940, voting the constitutional reforms denied him at war's end. January 1959, Charles-André Joseph-Marie de Gaulle sets out to do what no other man in modern history has done. With his inauguration as president, the 68-year-old general begins the task of reclaiming a second time the power and prestige of his beloved France. Pressing a program of independent atomic research, de Gaulle tells his countrymen that France cannot be France without greatness. And in February 1960, France explodes her first nuclear device in the Sahara Desert. Now all for France, says Charles de Gaulle. From this moment on, she is stronger, prouder, a great nation in every respect. Then suddenly, a grave crisis in Algeria. Army leaders revolt against self-determination for the French protectorate. In Paris, the old soldier turns the tide with a dramatic appeal to his countrymen. Self-determination, he says, is the only policy worthy of France.
Elle est celle qui a été définie par le président.
In Algiers, Frenchmen hear the general continue, I believe I shall be obeyed because I know you, love you, and have need of you for France. Then with rising emotion he concludes, once again I call on all Frenchmen, wherever they are and whoever they are, to reunite with France.
À se réunir à la France. Vive la République. Vive la France.
Again, Charles de Gaulle has gambled and won. The founder and savior of the Republic is at the peak of his popularity, the most commanding French ruler since Napoleon III a century ago. In 4 short years, the general has restored his country to a position of power on the European continent. In 1963, West German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer comes to Paris to sign a friendship pact with Charles de Gaulle. The two elder statesmen and their countries dominate post-war Europe. When the ceremonies are completed, the French president embraces and kisses the leader of the nation whose soldiers his countrymen cursed, jeered, and spit upon 20 years before. Having embraced an ancient enemy, General de Gaulle forsakes his traditional allies in NATO. He withdraws French military forces and orders all foreign NATO personnel to leave the country. The move throws thousands of Frenchmen out of work and drains $500 million from the country's economy. NATO moves its headquarters to Belgium. De Gaulle has won, and yet he has lost. The general's popularity is now on the decline. Student violence, prolonged strikes, economic setbacks have undermined de Gaulle's support when, in 1969, he asks his countrymen for a vote of confidence in a referendum on governmental reform. The issue is a minor one, but Charles de Gaulle stakes his political life on victory. On election night, the votes pour in. And from the beginning, there is a surprising anti-de Gaulle trend. After 10 years, France has turned against the general. His proposed reforms are rejected by 53% of the electorate. From Colombey-les-Deux-Églises comes a terse 2-sentence message. I am ceasing to exercise my functions as President of the Republic. This decision takes effect at noon today. Once again, Charles de Gaulle retires to his beloved country estate, living in seclusion until his death on November 9, 1970. An era ends for France, Europe, and the free world as an armored car carries the general's flag-draped casket on a last sad journey through the streets of Colombey. The 400 townspeople are joined by 40,000 men and women who crowd the funeral route to honor the man whose country was his life and whose life was his country. Services are simple, as de Gaulle wished. His $72 coffin is carried by 10 young men from Colombey, including a farmer, cheesemaker, and 3 college students. The general's widow, Yvonne, and son, Philippe, follow the pallbearers to Charles de Gaulle's final resting place in the tiny courtyard of the little church. The crusade is ended. At the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, a memorial service is attended by 63 world leaders, including Queen Juliana of Holland, Prince Charles of England, the Shah of Iran, David Ben-Gurion of Israel, Belgium's King Baudouin, President Podgorny of the Soviet Union, and President Nixon of the United States, who says, "Greatness knows no boundaries." Also attending is French President Pompidou, who announced the general's death with the words, "General de Gaulle is dead. France is a widow." The final and perhaps most touching tribute comes at night, when 250,000 Frenchmen, defying a drenching rain, march up the Champs-Élysées to the Arc de Triomphe. Glory, Charles de Gaulle once said, gives herself only to those who dream of her. In 80 years, glory in good measure gave herself to Charles de Gaulle and his beloved France.